Garden Success is brought to you in part by The Arbor Gate, featuring unusual plants, artisan-created decorative pieces, and a constantly changing array of items that bring beauty, comfort, and even flavor to the home and garden. Arbor Gate, 15635 FM 2920, Tomball, Texas, 281-351-8851, or arborgate.com.
Garden Success is also brought to you by the Farm Patch Produce Market and Garden Center, 3519 South College Avenue in Bryan, 979-822-7209.
Welcome to Garden Success with Skip Richter, the show designed to help you have a bountiful garden and a beautiful landscape. Call in now with your lawn and garden questions at 979-845-5689 or email your questions to gardensuccess@tamu.edu. And now, Texas A&M AgriLife Extension horticulturist Skip Richter.
Well, good day, and I look forward to visiting with you today about whatever you want to talk about plants. I suspect we'll talk about hot, we'll talk about dry, we'll talk about why are they dying, but we can talk about anything. If you got questions, give us a call at 845-5689, 845-5689, or by email at gardensuccess@tamu.edu, gardensuccess@tamu.edu. I wish I had a nickel for every email I've received and phone call at the Extension office about why is my tree dying? And my answer is, why are the other ones alive? That's kind of the truth of it all. You know, I was looking at the weather data out at Easterwood just yesterday, and this is a unique year. I'm told it's the hottest June on record. It's the hottest July on record. And July actually was also the hottest month on record, previously held by an August sometime in the past. That's amazing since, I guess we've had this summer 45, I believe, days over 100 degrees, and as you know, many of them well over 100 degrees. I think 111 may have even been recorded this summer. And then going back to about 60 days, to just after the beginning of June, going back 60 days, we have had 0.04 inches of rain. Not even half of a tenth of an inch of rain, essentially. Now, that's why I say, why are any of the plants alive? Because, you know, that's just amazing. It impresses you on how resilient plants are. Of course, we have plants that are dying. We have areas of lawns that are dying. We have trees that are suddenly turning brown and not going to come back. We have other trees that are going to bounce back. The cypress trees that are popular around town, they turn brown. Often they turn brown toward sometime in August, and then they begin to leaf out again at the tips. They will scorch out and drop their leaves, but they're not dead. Now, I mean, it could be dry enough or long enough to kill a cypress, but if we get any kind of rain here at any point in time, a little break from the heat, I think your cypress, by and large, are going to be okay. Now, I realize every tree, you know, all bets are off with any one individual tree for a number of reasons, but they're going to bounce back. Post oaks, you got a yard full of them, and one of them turns toasty brown. It looks like overnight. It's a little slower than that, but why did the others stay green? Well, there's a lot of reasons, and it kind of boils down to a combination of factors. I guess, you know, one analogy to look at it is like 4 people go to a party, and they're in a room full of 50 people, and they go around shaking hands and talking to all the people in the party. And after that, one of them gets sick, and the other 3 don't. Why? Well, there are a lot of factors, you know. What makes us likely to get sick? Are you getting a lot of rest? Are you eating right? You know, or do you wash your hands instead of, you know, just shaking hands and rubbing your eyes and so on? There's a lot of factors. Well, with plants, they're all genetically different. Of course, true for humans as well. They're all genetically different, so that's a factor. They may be growing closer to an area with dependable moisture than another tree in the yard, or They may have been closer to dependable moisture, and now there's rain gutters on the house, and suddenly what was wet now is no longer wet. And a tree can't overnight move its root system around. It takes time. And then there's all the unknowns. But when a plant gets weak, like with a person, you're more likely to have problems with illnesses. And I think we find, with plants and trees especially, that they're pretty resilient. But when they start down, a combination of things starts to happen. We have a disease of oaks called hypoxylon canker. And in just a perfectly healthy oak, you typically don't see hypoxylon jump on it and kill it. In fact, I've been told by pathologists that you can go out into oaks in the woods and find hypoxylon present, but the tree's okay. But when that tree gets weak, now the bark starts popping off and falling to the ground, and you've got olive drab, dusty, or black tar-like or grayish splotches that are evidence of the fungal presence in that tree, the hypoxylon that did that. And so why did it die? Well, maybe hypoxylon finished it off, but it began long before hypoxylon. Did you build a house around the tree recently, or a driveway? Did you run trenches for an underground water line, and how close to the trunk were those trenches? And did you add soil or take soil away? What's been your watering pattern in the past, and what's your watering pattern now? A lot of people think they have to water their trees every week, and you absolutely do not. Essentially, an established tree never needs watering here. Now, when we get into a severe, long drought with hot weather like this, yes, you better water, because it's going to really weaken it, set it back, and so on. And some species, you have to, because they're just too wimpy. But in general, a tree has a deep and extensive root system. When I say deep, I mean most of the feeder roots are in the top foot, but they've got some sinker roots that go down deeper and can reach lower levels of water and get them through. That's how they survive here. But when we bring them into our yard and we've got our little irrigation for the lawn going off 3 times a week, which is way too much, that shallow, frequent wetting, any plant is going to build a root system around dependable moisture. That's where they proliferate. And so you go from a plant that was able to survive to now the demands are greater than your little 3 times a week sprinkling can accomplish in terms of supplying the moisture it needs, and a tree like that dies. If you look at it, post oaks live in the post oak belt, which is kind of a north-south belt through Texas, and it comes through our area. And they do great out there in the wild. Of course, in the wild, plants die all the time, but in general, they do good. We move in, put a yard and a house around them, and they start dying. Or maybe they've been in your yard for a number of years, they survive the building process, but then they start succumbing. And I think that our watering practices may be a part of what causes that for those trees. So that's a lot of words to basically say it is amazing that our plants do survive conditions like this, but sometimes the way we take care of them predisposes them to some problems that we might have. And that's true of a lawn, and it's true of trees and everything in between. With those kind of stresses, getting our plants through this kind of weather is a challenge, because now you add to it your water systems regulations and recommendations, whether you're in Bryan or College Station or out at a Welborn water system, or there's water systems all around, and they're in different stages of restrictions, and they are asking for all of us to cut back on our water use. And watering wisely is one way we cut back. And if we continue to watch our water use go up, we will, no matter what water system you're on, we can enter stages where you're not allowed to do a lot of things that you would like to do water-wise. And so we would rather avoid that. And from a plant health standpoint, a lot of water is wasted and doesn't benefit the plant. And if it were applied differently, it would. So if you're a tree, a good deep soaking every 2 weeks, that would be maybe an inch of water. And it may take a while to get an inch of water in the ground. If you apply it all at once, most sprinkler heads put it out too fast for the soil to absorb it, especially if you have a clay soil. And so we have to water a little bit, let it soak, water a little bit, let it soak, and so on. That's true for lawns too as well, by the way. But a good soaking infrequently is kind of a rescue treatment to help them along. The regular watering, more of your water is being lost to evaporation than it would be if you gave it a good soaking. Because think about this, if you have an inch of water to apply and you put it all on at once, after you've wet, let's say the grass, or the mulch that's on the ground or whatever, and you keep applying water, and then now it's moving down and going into the soil. So the latter part of your watering cycle is actually putting water into the bank account of the soil for that inch. Then that's available in the days or even a couple of weeks or more to come, depending on the location of the plant, for that plant to draw from. But if you took that 1 inch of water and you applied it in 4 1/4 inch irrigations, well, really you've wet the grass blades and the thatch and maybe the just tiniest part of the surface of the soil, and the water goes off, and here comes another 100-degree day with sunlight and wind and all that, and that water's gone. I guess you could say you've contributed to making BCS area more humid, but you haven't contributed to helping your plants. So when you water, put the water in the soil bank account with a good deep soaking, and then turn it off. And what happens then is you've wet the soil profile, and as the plants and roots pull water out of the soil, and it goes from being saturated to on its way toward being dry again, oxygen moves down in the soil and the pore spaces between the soil particles, and that also helps with a deep resilient root system. To constantly keep the surface wet it doesn't help with that. And so water wisely. If you're under restrictions, there's a lot of things you can't do. But if you are not under restrictions, you have the freedom to water wisely and to not contribute to the problems that community-wide we're having around here. And so I guess some other tips might be things like if you have an automatic system, and when you turn it on and the whole yard, everything gets a good soaking, and then you turn it off, and then as the days go by or even a week later you look, and the areas under the trees, the grass is still green. Even St. Augustine, which really can tolerate shade better than any other grass, is green in the shade of the tree. The leaves may be rolling a little bit. You may see the beginnings of water stress, but it's still green. Whereas out in the sun, it may have already turned toasty and tawny colored. And so what you can do is, rather than running the whole system every time you water, you could run your whole system, and then as it begins to dry out, maybe a hose-in sprinkler out in that brown spot. Think of it as a rescue, or even hand watering in small spots. Just be aware that when you hand water, you think you're really wetting the soil, and in most cases, unless you water a lot and come back and water again and come back and water again, you're not getting much water down in the soil. Try that out sometime. Get your thumb on the end of a hose, water, watch the things puddle up, and then wait a minute and then go back and dig down in that spot, and I bet you see the water about a quarter or a half inch deep. It's deceptive. But the rescue treatments is another way to save. You don't have to run the whole system every time you water. And remember that if everybody just cooperates, we end up all being able to water our plants and have the water we need for all the other things. Your landscapes, as important as they are to you and me, they're low on the totem pole when it comes to being able to drink water, to flush the toilet, for firefighting, and other higher priority items in the community's water needs list. And so I guess that's an appeal. It's your house, it's your water. You do as you wish, but just realize that it has an effect, and if we want to still have water to be able to save our plants, we need to be using it wisely now before we're told we have to water only a certain way, or we can't water at all. So anyway, there's a spiel on water, but it's the elephant in the room. Water in no water in 100 degrees is really setting us up here. What we're going to find, I'm sitting here thinking this could be the saddest show I've ever done if I keep talking about the problems of plants. But I do want to just add one more thing. When a lawn goes through stresses, whether it's stresses from certain herbicides that we put on the lawn to kill weeds, some of those stress the grass, whether it's stress from drought, problems like take-all root rot can be more exacerbated. And I mentioned the problem with hypoxylin canker on oak trees, that when the tree is really weakened and stressed, that's when that disease tends to be a problem. Take-all root rot in St. Augustine lawns, or in certain other species of grass too, that's the same kind of thing. And so we're going to see effects from this drought beyond just, did I make it till fall and now the hurricanes are coming and it's raining and things are cooling off and I got through it. We're going to see some long-term effects from this. And so that's nothing we can control at this point, but just be aware that is also a factor. And I'm going to get off of the bad news and let's talk about some better news. Our phone number, 845, if you still want to call after all that, 845-5689, 845-5689, or by email at gardensuccess@tamu.edu, gardensuccess@tamu.edu. First of all, I do want to mention that you've heard us talk about the Master Gardening Program before. Our course this fall begins the last Wednesday in August, and it goes through about the middle of November, every Wednesday. And if you're interested in becoming a Master Gardener volunteer with AgriLife Extension, you can call our office at 823-0129. That's the Brazos County Extension Office, 823-0129. But don't delay. We have had 2 information sessions we're about. There's a third one that we've added on coming up for folks that couldn't make the first 2. But give a call and make sure your name gets on the list. You can find out more about the program at that session and decide if you'd like to apply or not for it. But it's a wonderful course. We give you the basics of horticulture, from soil science to botany, those basic foundational topics. We build on that with information about specific plants like lawns, fruit trees, vegetables, for example, and woody ornamentals. We add the peripheral things that are all part of horticulture, and that would include entomology and plant pathology that affect our plants. We'll have a session on water conservation. What a timely one that is. And we have a number of other classes. I teach a class on finding research-based information online. We even have a class on a research-based approach with organic gardening for those of you who prefer to garden organically. So what does research tell us that informs us in how to garden organically more effectively? So the course covers all of that, but if you're interested, you really need to not delay, because it won't be long and things will be closed up. But 823-0129. Also, if you've tried to go to the web to watch some of the videos of past shows, right now we're working on getting some things fixed. The page isn't loading up quite right. We're going to have that fixed in a minute. But you can go back, I say a minute, soon. You can go back and listen to past shows at the website. You go to KAMU FM website, do a search for Garden Success, and it'll get you right there. And you can listen to past shows, or if you have friends. I know we have folks that listen outside this area, some live online, some go back and view the past shows. Let's see, we had a question come on email from Glenn. Glenn has a lacebark elm, and the leaves have little yellow tips, and it's just the ends of the leaves, and that is not a cause for concern. This is a fairly recently planted plant, and I'm very impressed that it's in as good a shape as it is, considering the weather and stuff we've had. You've been taking good care of it. Don't worry about that. Plants are very resilient, and that is not a concern. Just be cognizant of, you want to keep the root system moist for this fairly newly planted plant. that doesn't have the extensive root system yet, but without overwatering, keeping it too soggy wet. But that would not be something to be concerned about. We had a question that came in from Donna on hyacinth bean. Donna planted a bean that she thought was a different kind of bean, and it grew a very vigorous vine and produced these beautiful, I would call them pink, but I think there's probably another better name for that color. It's kind of pink with a bluish tint. What do y'all call that? Anyway, flowers. And someone told her, those are hyacinth bean, they're poisonous, don't eat them. Well, she had eaten them already. But they're not hyacinth bean. Hyacinth bean has a very long bloom stalk. I mean, it blooms and the tip keeps growing and it keeps blooming. And you may have, a foot-long bloom stalk out there on the hyacinth bean. The pods on hyacinth bean are purple. These pods are not. And if you see the seed, and by the way, hyacinth bean is a wonderful ornamental, very beautiful long bloom stalks. So if you have room for a vigorous annual vine that grows from seed, hyacinth bean is a nice one to have. But the seeds on hyacinth bean are black, and the edge on one side is white. It's just like it has a white rim around half of a black seed, and so that's real distinct and easy. Now, as far as edible, the information out there is just so conflicting, and even within a website, you will find conflicting information. For example, pretty reputable sources will say, well, if you cook the beans, you got to pour the water off twice. It's almost like cooking poisonous pokeweed, to make it edible. Then other sites will tell you, no, these seeds are used in Asian cuisine, Thai cuisine, Indian cuisine. They're baked, and all the mature seeds are used and things like that. So I guess there's better beans to plant to eat. And if you want to do the research online and figure out can you eat them or not and how, I'm hesitant to say too much about that because I'm not a specialist in poisonous glycosides and other things and plants. But they are eaten in some cuisines, and I don't know all the details of that. I'm told that cooking is very important in that process. That's an important thing. But if I were hungry, I would not plant hyacinth bean. There's a lot other good beans that you could grow, including some of our vining summer peas. Everybody knows what a black-eyed pea or a purple hull or Crowder or cream peas are, and some of those vine quite a bit. And then there's the things called yard-long beans that are actually kin to the black-eyed pea rather than the green bean. Closer kin, and those are hot weather tolerant peas that vine and produce pods that you can eat the pods or shell the seeds if you want to do that. So that I would go with something like that. Our phone number 845-5689, 845-5689, or by email gardensuccess@tamu.edu, gardensuccess@tamu.edu. Marilyn sends a picture of a volunteer tree coming up under our foundation down in Houston, a relative's house. And what is it and how to kill it? Well, it's a willow, and willows are one of those trees that loves to volunteer in all kinds of places. We have certain species, certainly Chinese tallow is that way, hackberry definitely that way, and willow too will pop up in different places. The best way to kill a woody ornamental is to dig it up and get the main part of the root system. Now, sometimes that's not feasible. In the case where it's growing literally beside, and they think maybe even under the foundation, that is not that feasible. So if you cut off any kind of a woody plant, so it could be a poison ivy stem that's now become a woody trunk, or it could be hackberries or some brush or whatever, and you immediately, I say paint, it's really dab a product containing triclopyr on that cut surface. It translocates down in there, and it almost always kills it. Sometimes you have to do a second treatment, but you're not spraying things, you're not getting it over desirable plants. You could have a rose bush right next to it, and as long as you just dab the freshly cut surface with a little bit of the product containing triclopyr, that'll work. Now, ranchers have versions of it they use. If you're a home gardener, look for things called poison ivy and killer or brush be gone or other things. But triclopyr is the ingredient. And I use the little foam brushes like some people use to paint, and you can just dab it in there and dab it right on the surface and then throw the brush away. And that works pretty good, and that'll get rid of those woody ornamentals pretty well. So hopefully that will help. Our phone number is 845-5689, and the email is gardensuccess@tamu.edu. And let's go to the phones now and talk to David. Hello, David.
Oh, Skip. Thought I'd give you a little break from your monologue there.
Thank you. The listeners are cheering.
Well, I don't have anything too earth-shaking, but I will say that I'm in the Wellborn Water District, and I was at Feast of Caring yesterday talking to the College Station Fire Chief, and he is too in the same water district, and we were commenting about we're at stage 3 now,
yes,
which is 1 day a week,
mm-hmm.
and in a previous show, you were puzzled, as was I. I didn't call in that day, but you were talking to Jennifer, whatever her name is, with College Station, about
yes,
how it appeared to say you could not water in the middle of the night, and that didn't seem to
right.
make a lot of sense. Well,
mm-hmm.
Sure enough, this stage 3 is very clear. The only time you can water is after 9 p.m. or before 5 a.m. And he and I both agreed, yes, that makes a lot more sense. That's
yeah.
That's the low demand, and that's when it ought to be watering. So
right.
apparently there was a lot of confusion on that, and so that at least reinforces what I've thought all along, and I think you were sort of thinking as well, that it does make more sense to set your timers to go off during the nighttime instead
right.
of when everybody else is using water. So I wanted to pass that along. I don't know, as far as the other stages go, whether they have different rules, but that certainly, he and I agreed, that makes a whole lot more sense. So
yeah.
And that's when my timers are set. It's going to go off in the middle of the night.
Okay. Well, that's good. Good to know. I think maybe what I ended up finding out was maybe the water supplies are getting replenished, up into the tower or whatever.
That's what Jennifer said. Yeah.
During that time, and so I mean, if one person or two people did it, it wouldn't affect that. But if everybody watered in the middle of the night, it'd be hard to catch up and be ready for the next day.
Right.
So.
Well, I sort of understand that, except that it seems even worse to be trying to water during the day. If a fire breaks out, as he said, you've got a fire or something, well, then the water system is really in bad shape.
Yes.
Yes, it may be replenished, but how long does it take to replenish a water tower? I don't know. And so there's still some mystery there, but that it didn't say anything at all. I mean, no other time to water other than the middle of the night. So I just thought I'd pass that along. There may be more to the story. I'm not claiming to know all the information. Only other thing is just sort of was surprising to me, although I've not really the first time I've done this, but you've already talked about the heat. This goes in the category of, I bet you didn't know that kind of thing. Got collard greens that I planted probably last fall.
Mm-hmm.
And had some good collard greens during the winter. Well, they're still, I'm keeping them alive, and I just a few days ago picked some nice young leaves. I had delicious collard greens just a few days ago growing in this heat. So
wow. Now, you say delicious.
Don't give up on your collard greens.
Were they stronger flavored than your winter collard?
No, they were mild. Now I got the younger leaves, but they were mild. They did not have the slightest bit of bitterness to them. So
that's interesting. I've got kale plants that are almost chest high now, and they're still going too. And but they are stronger. My kale it's got that cruciferous family pungency, kind of background to it, and they're a little bit stronger. But that's good to know. I appreciate hearing that. Thank you.
Yeah. So I just keep a reasonable amount of water on them, and of course if I don't, they wilt real bad. Of course.
Yes.
And, but so, and I have done that where I've actually had the same plant for I think at least 2 full years, and of course they got real long and snaky looking, but and of course they do bolt eventually, but if I break all that off, or they do seem to start putting on regular leaves again even after bolting. It's not like I have to pull them up. So I'm just passing that along. It's not the most interesting news. A lot of people don't even like collard greens when they taste good, but including my wife. But in fact, whenever I cook them, especially the stronger ones, she says you're stinking up the house again. So.
All right. Well, David, thank you for that.
Not the most fascinating news to give you, but I thought I'd give you a break.
Oh no, it's good. Thank you. And I said, I'm sure listeners are glad for the monologue to stop a little bit.
No, you're doing great. Thanks. Bye.
Take care. All right, we're going to go back to the phones again, 845-5689, and talk to Gene. Hello, Gene.
Hello, Skip. I've got a question about my lawn.
Okay.
Typically, about this time of year, I put some fertilizer on. With the heat and the drought, is that a good or a bad idea right now?
I wouldn't do it, and it's not necessary. If you're returning clippings and have been through all your mowings, those things are decomposing. That is, the clippings are the fastest part of the grass plant to decompose. Runners are much slower, and roots can be slower, but the clippings are releasing those nutrients back into the soil. And the last thing the grass needs now is to be encouraged to grow more. And excessive amounts of nitrogen promote top growth at the expense of root growth. And so I would say you don't need to fertilize at all. If you want to do a fall fertilization, then that would be something in early October, maybe, that you would do perhaps.
I've typically done it in the past in September, but
you could do late September too. I mean, it's not a black and white line there, but if I were, of course, with the drought, lawns are looking bad, and so people are thinking, well, maybe I do need to fertilize, but it's not the lack of nutrients that's the problem, and so I would definitely hold off on that.
Okay, because I was afraid that even if I did fertilize, I would cause the lawn to burn even more than it already has.
You could with salt-based synthetic type fertilizers. If you over-apply them, you could do that, and the grass it's just trying to survive right now.
I know. Okay. Now, when I do fertilize, in the past I've used Scott's with the iron and sulfur in it. Is that a good one to use here, or would I be better off going to producers and getting theirs? I don't even know what their composition is.
So I wouldn't recommend any brands or anything like that. I would say that the best answer to your question is have your soil tested, look at what's already there, and then buy a fertilizer that applies what's not there already. You may have super high phosphorus, or you may need phosphorus. So in general, I recommend fertilizers with a 3:1:2 ratio or a 4:1:2 ratio, but that is, yard to yard, that may be a very inappropriate recommendation. And so I would do the soil test. But in absence of that, I would go with something, especially as we move into fall. If you want to do a fall fertilization, you want some nitrogen and you want some potassium, because their uptake is related. And the potassium especially is also helping with some of the development of the winter hardiness, although we're not on the cold end of St. Augustine's range, but it does. Creating a strong plant going into winter means your grass comes out stronger in the spring.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir, Gene.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you. All right. Well, let's go back to the emails. And Fang had some questions about roses. Sent a number of photos, and I think they had applied a fertilizer that had a lot of phosphorus in it in the roses. When you look at the pictures of the roses, and I know this is radio, but imagine a green rose leaf that's yellow and brown around the edges. The tip and the margins of the leaf are brown. Now, when you see that kind of pattern, that's typically not a disease. That's not a disease of the leaf. Something is preventing moisture from making it all the way through the plant. The tip and margin of the leaf is the last part to receive moisture. If you over-fertilize with a salt-based fertilizer, which most synthetics are going to be salt-based, the salt moves through the plant and when the water transpires out of the leaf, it leaves those salts behind, and you can get a burn from over-fertilizing with one of those kind of fertilizers. The symptoms on the rose also show new growth that's very almost yellow and lacking color, and that could be related to excessive phosphorus. When pH is high and phosphorus is high, iron becomes unavailable. The iron is there in your soil, but it changes to a form the plant can't take up and utilize. And so we generally don't overdo the phosphorus. Again, the first answer to all fertilizer questions is, have you tested your soil? Because that really is what should guide what we do in terms of fertilizing. In general, phosphorus is important for plants. Potassium is important. Magnesium is important. We have 17, I think it's 17 different nutrients that are needed by plants. Some, like one or two of them, may be just under certain situations or certain kinds of plants that really need that, especially or certain parts of the plant development process. But in general, they're all important. So even something as tiny in terms of the quantity needed as boron or manganese, for example, if there is absolutely none, the plant can't live and grow and survive. And you're never going to hear me say go fertilize the boron or fertilize the manganese. There is plenty out there. And as you add compost, as you have mulch that decomposes, all that plant tissue had to have had those nutrients in order for the plants to grow. So now when it rots back and goes back into the soil, the nutrients are going back with it. And so we don't worry about all those, but just know that when we misfertilize, we can create nutrient problems. And I don't know that that's what's causing the yellowing on the roses, but it could be. It could be part of the factor for it. So I would hold off on the high phosphorus for sure. I don't know exactly, depending on where you are in your soil, sandy, clay, so on, you may or may not already have plenty of phosphorus, but that's what I'd recommend on that. And so the margin and tip burn, that's going to be a water-related thing. So in roses, it could be that it got too dry. Or it could be that something else affected that flow through a plant. So if something kills the root tips, like soggy, wet, oversaturated conditions, which I doubt that's the problem this year, and you get root death, then that can be followed by certain kinds of things like a drought injury appearance or a nutrient problem because the roots have been lost. So nutrients are there, roots aren't there to take them up. So a lot of factors in there. I think this is water related on those. An email from Rosina and Thomas. Ask about soil testing, and I'm going to answer that in a broader way because I keep promoting soil testing. And so when you have your soil tested, when you want to have your soil tested, I don't recommend going and buying the little store-bought kits, or maybe you buy them online. The accuracy of those is not as good as a lab that is hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment doing truly accurate testing of things. The type of the process that's used to test for this or that nutrient, depending on the kind of soil you have, certain kinds of extraction techniques would work better than others. And so leave that to the decades of research and PhDs that live and sleep soil chemistry, and spend just the very reasonable cost on having a soil test. You don't need it every year, just once in a while. Check it out, or you're putting in a garden in a new area, have that done. And that's what I would recommend. Now, how do you have your soil tested? Well, you go online to soiltesting.tamu.edu, soiltesting.tamu.edu, and soil testing is one word. There is a form for an urban soil test, as opposed to the standard soil test would be like for a farm or a ranch kind of soil. This is a soil that's going to have St. Augustine or roses or vegetables or fruit in it. And so urban soil test form, print it out, fill it out. The instructions on how to take the sample are there, and the instructions on where to mail the sample are there. Since listeners here are primarily local, you can drive it over and drop it off at the lab if you don't want to mail it. The lab is behind the vet school, and it's if you come in off of Welborn, where the large oil tanks are across the railroad tracks, it's going to be the first building you see after the stop sign on the right. So I don't know how much that helps, but you can find the address on the soil test form and take it and drop it off yourself there with the payment that is required for the type of test you have done. For most situations, the vast majority, a standard regular soil test is all you need. You can do a soil test that also looks at micronutrients, or a soil test. There's all kinds of versions of a soil test. The standard is almost always just fine, unless we're troubleshooting a very unique problem. I would just start with a standard soil test. So take the soil sample that's representative of the root zone of the plant. So you don't want to scoop the soil off the surface, because roots go down, and so we try to take a soil sample about 6 inches deep to get a good example of what's down in the soil. You don't want to take it all in one place. Maybe it's your yard, and you know how you have those green spots in the yard where phyto stopped last fall, and yeah. So that would not be a very representative spot to do a soil sample. So we take it from a number of places, mix it in a bucket, a clean bucket, not one that just had fertilizer in it, and then take about a pint of soil out of the bucket and send that into the lab for analysis. Again, the form tells you how to take the test, but the lab can tell you what's in the soil they receive. You need to make sure the soil they receive is what's representative of the root zone of the plants you're going to be growing. So hopefully that makes sense. So if you're looking at a larger area and over here the grass grows well, over here the grass doesn't grow well, take 2 samples separate. Don't mix those together, because again, the average doesn't tell you what's going on in those 2 different types of areas. So hopefully that helps. Hey, let's go back to the phones now and talk to Jennifer. Hello, Jennifer.
Hello.
Hi.
The soil information was really helpful too, because I have those same questions.
Oh, I was just droning on about water for the first part of the show, so I don't know.
Yeah, I heard Welborn and stage 3, and I heard my name, and I was talking with 2 other people in my office about our water issues, and I kept saying, wait a minute, I need to hear what they're saying over there. So
that was
anything I could clear up.
Yeah, that was a caller just calling in, and we making some comments about, the thing of why do we not water, tell everybody to water at night. And, we discussed, I think, what you had said before about we're recharging the towers and things like that at that time. But anyway, I believe he indicated that Welborn was saying 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. or something.
Yeah, it's 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. for them.
Okay.
For their watering windows. And I had just said, midnight to 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. to midnight on the same day, just to keep people watering on the same day for us.
Okay, good.
But again, it's voluntary. We had an issue, and we still kind of have an issue with when we have like drain and fill cycles throughout the day with our water towers, and we're still seeing it in the mornings a lot, and especially with our Greensbury tower, because that's the part of town that has the newer neighborhoods with the irrigation systems, and that tower just drains really fast in the morning. So that's why I was suggesting, watering in the evening. I know that sometimes that's a concern with fungal diseases, but I think when it's 100 degrees at 9 o'clock at night, we're not worried about that so much.
Right. Yeah, we have bigger issues than that. But again, I've got an article tomorrow in the Eagle talking about the heat and the drought and everything. But miswatering by light frequent sprinkling is more of our fungal problem than just watering at night is. So
okay.
I know the use seems to continue to go up, right?
Yeah, College Station has we've just kind of been cruising along at about 24 or 25 million gallons a day for the past month. So our usage it dips occasionally, but it's kind of been really steady. So I'm not sure if people are just not, I know that some people are complying because they tell me, but we still get frequent reports of businesses or homes or somebody irrigating in the middle of the day or irrigating a lot. And
yeah.
I just think people are concerned about it's so hot, it's so dry, and so they're just like increasing their irrigation when I have been following the 2 days per week, the deep and frequent soaking, and I've got some sprinklers that are in need of repair, but the parts of the grass that are getting water are doing fine.
I was curious about something, and that I mentioned in the article tomorrow that there all the things that we can do to help, and
Good.
One of them was to have your system checked out. And I know you guys on the website, maybe, I don't know, is it the BV Water Smart or is it the College Station website where you have the thing of you can get an analysis of your system, or I'm probably not using the right word there.
A checkup, that's on the College Station website.
Is that something y'all are even able to get around to doing right now with all else going on, or
yes,
not?
No, I'm doing my best to get to people's requests. I'm kind of prioritizing the people who've called in and said that they have a high bill.
Okay.
Or the people who, if you have a really high bill if you get the letter from College Station Utilities that says, hey, and we don't send those out for everybody, but if it's an extraordinarily high bill, you'll get a letter saying, hey, we read your meter and we didn't believe it, so we read it again. And
okay. All right.
Yeah, so we definitely can do that, because I helped a customer out last week that had like 4 start times and and 2 programs, and so.
Well, good. I'm glad to know all that. Well, thank you. I appreciate you calling in, and just keep us posted, and we'll keep hanging on. I've tried different rain dances, but I haven't found the right one yet, so we'll see what happens.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, our phone number is 845-5689. We're going to go to Kimberly now. Hello, Kimberly.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
I know this sounds like a broken record, but I still have a watering question. I'm one of these poor individuals that is under Wixon water, and I have a new lawn. We are not allowed to water at all unless we use hand sprinklers or soaker hoses.
Okay.
I'd say 75% of my yard was already dead a month ago. But what I'm noticing, trying to use a soaker hose very infrequently, in fact, this week was the first week I did that, the water is pooling. So I'm sure the soil is very poor quality, and I do need to have it analyzed. But is there anything to recommend that would help that, or is it just too late until we can apply top dressing?
You said the water is pooling?
It doesn't really seem to soak in.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay, even with a soaker.
That's what really surprised me. I knew with the sprinkler system that, that wasn't as surprising, but I noticed with the soaker hose, and it may just be that I don't know if it's too dry or if it's just the quality of the soil.
Well, clay, from clay to sand across that spectrum, the clays are slow. I one time was looking into one of the soil types called Houston black clay. It's found all along the Gulf Coast and over even toward Austin. And I think that they said that like an eighth of an inch an hour is how much water that clay alone can take in. Now, when you got plant roots and other things, it speeds things up a little bit. But I think maybe the soaker hose may be putting it out faster than I'm imagining. And so that would be one possibility. Aerating at some point, don't do it now. But aerating would also help, to kind of open up that soil. When you aerate, you get some organic matter down in the holes that are created, and that might help a little bit. I don't know. We just have to figure out why. Now sodium, which is present in a lot of our water systems at pretty high levels, that causes a clay to not tighten up. In other words, it's not a loose, friable structure. Instead, it just sort of holds water more. And so as we overwater, we are then adding to the sodium problem, which both creates sodium, which has a soil structure effect, but it also raises the pH of the soil, which has a not so good for plants effect. And so if the area has been watered a lot in the past, then that could be a factor. But if this is new construction kind of thing, then the sodium is probably not already a problem there.
There was a problem, I'm sure, with overwatering because I didn't have anyone who would check the sprinkler system. College Station, that's only if you live in their city limits, and it was getting watered under 4 cycles, and I did not know that until one morning when I discovered it was still on at 8 a.m. and I had a extremely high water bill. It didn't help the greenness of the lawn at all, so I could see where that might have contributed.
Okay. Well, so. I would just slow soak where you can, when you can. It's kind of hard to water a whole lawn by hand and get a good slow soaking. I mean, you would pretty much be out all day trying to water. And so the soakers are fine. Just, I don't know, maybe they need moving around a little more, and then come back to that spot and water again. That is about all I know to tell you, and I know that's not good news.
Because really, until we get some rain, top dressing or aerating, none of that is advised right now, correct?
No, that's a longer term. You know, if you've got a bad, thick clay and these issues we've talked about or what's going on, then some top dressing and some aerating can over time help improve that. But the plants themselves improve the soil. You know, grass roots live about a year. So you got a grass root goes into the ground, it pushes the soil apart, and eventually it dies, and all that organic matter is now in the soil that was the root. And then here comes another root growing. There's constantly new roots coming on and old roots dying, and a cycle, and it builds the soil. So just getting your grass plants healthy goes a long way toward improving the soil and its ability to take in water.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you. We'll just keep praying for rain.
Yeah, good idea. Thank you, Kimberly.
Bye.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye. Let's see. We'll go back to the emails, and I'm not probably going to get to all your emails today, but we'll try. Brooks asked an interesting question. How long do roses live, especially Knockout and Caldwell Pink? He's got some that have been around 24 years. That's a nice rose bush. The answer to how long roses live is kind of like the answer to how long do plants live in general. It varies, and often as plants get older, the cumulative issues over the years can lead to that plant's demise. It's not like they get a certain age and they just die. But there are ranges. Some plants tend to, of course, be shorter lived than others. But roses, there's a rose in Tucson, Arizona, that was hauled out there, I'm told, on a buckboard wagon by a bride in the 1800s, and it's still alive. At one point, they have a huge structure. It's a Lady Banks rose, so it's a climber, and they have this huge structure to hold all the branches of it that covered a quarter of an acre. So imagine that. So how long can they live? Well, we don't know yet. That rose is still alive, but they do live a long time, and it comes down to the care of the plant. If it's a grafted rose, that's a little different than if it's a rose on its own roots. I would think a rose on its own roots may do a little bit better for longer than a grafted rose would. But Knockout and Caldwell Pink probably are on their own roots. I'm not as sure about the Knockout as I would be about the Caldwell Pink, but I would say a long time. Keep taking care of them, and hopefully they'll keep going. I had a question come from Lisa about organic ways to control grubs in the lawn. Grubs are a challenge. They come out, and we have the June bugs. We call them June bugs. They fly around. You see them at your porch light at night. Then they mate. They lay eggs. The eggs hatch out into tiny larvae that feed near the surface, and then as the weather gets really hot, they move down deeper into the soil. And so we want to find the time when they're near the surface where anything we use, synthetic, organic, or whatever, would be able to get to them, and then but before they move down too deep. But we also want them all to hatch out, so we don't treat, and then a whole bunch more hatch out and have to treat again. There are some entomopathic nematodes, nematodes that go inside an insect and kill it. You would have to get a good drench of water with those and catch the grubs when they're right up near the surface. That would be an organic option to help suppress the grub themselves. Also know that a few grubs is not a problem. I think it's 5 to 7 per square foot that where we call that the threshold where you need to do something about it. And in most cases, you're not going to have that many. And so it from an organic standpoint, it would just be, don't worry about it. It's going to be okay until it hits that threshold. I would think there's probably a pyrethrum-based insecticide that would be also effective on the grubs. I would have to look that up, Lisa, to be sure, but that would be an organic on it. I don't know if the spinosad-based insecticides would work on grubs, but that would be another one I would look into to see if it has grubs on the label for it. Spinosad is also an organic option for that. But I'd need a little more searching before I would tell you, yes, go buy this product and it'll fix it for you. But hopefully that helps. Let's see. We had David emails, and he has a question. He's not really worried about his lawn, but he has a wooded lot, and some of the trees are native and around 10 years old or so. He's got some elms that have several branches going brown, a post oak that went all brown, a yopon that's half brown, and a magnolia that's dropped half its leaves. Well, the magnolia is not real happy with this at all, and so that one, I don't know. It may come back in parts of it, and the question will be then, is it still an aesthetically acceptable plant if it survives but loses sections of the plant? Elms are pretty tough. If it's a native elm, it's probably, it could be a cedar elm, it could be a kind of a winged type elm, or there are some others. They probably will bounce back if they're not too young. The post oak that goes all brown, I don't expect to have it come back. And then the yopon, again, those are pretty tough, but they have an underground system where you may lose an above ground part, but then get some resprouting later coming up out of the ground, David. So there's not much you can do in a wooded area. You're not going to run a sprinkler out there to save them, so you just kind of a wait and watch. About the only thing in your control is don't add insult to injury by going in there with equipment and compacting the soil or trenching or doing any other thing like that, which I'm sure you're not intended to do anyway. But hopefully that would help out a little bit on that as well. I want to remind you that if you're interested in applying for the Master Gardener course, we have one more information session coming up, but you need to call the Extension office at 823-0129, 823-0129 to get more information and find out when the session is. And in that session, you'll find out more about the course, the dates. It actually begins the last Wednesday in August and goes through about the middle of November every Wednesday. And it is just a lot of information by some of the best, in my opinion, the best teachers in Texas. Of course, we're right here on the footsteps of the university and have access to some wonderful folks that really know their stuff. Well, I appreciate you listening today. It's a good time to be inside, right? So I hope you join us again next Thursday. We'll be back from 12 to 1 as always. Tell your friends about the radio show, and hopefully they'll join us as well.
You've been listening to Garden Success with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension horticulturist Skip Richter. Join us again next week as Skip discusses your questions about gardening and landscaping in the Brazos Valley.
Garden Success is brought to you in part by the Arbor Gate, featuring unusual plants, artisan-created decorative pieces, and a constantly changing array of items that bring beauty, comfort, and even flavor to the home and garden. Arbor Gate, 15635 FM 2920, Tomball, Texas, 281-351-8851 or arborgate.com.
Garden Success is also brought to you by the Farm Patch Produce Market and Garden Center, 3519 South College Avenue in Bryan, 979-822-7209.